So Firebase authentication is great, but it only has person's email. We need somewhere to store other user information. For example, maybe a username and maybe even a profile picture. For that, we're going to use another one of Firebase's services, and it is called Firestore. So for Firestore, we're going to create a database here. And you have two modes. You have production mode or you have test mode. For this, we'll just do test mode. Select where you want your data to be stored. And here is your new Cloud Firestore database. So what I do here is store data, and I do that using collections. So here we can start a collection called users. And we can give an auto ID, and here have a field of name with value, maybe my name. And let's say email. Okay, so there we go. This is our very first entry within our users collection. So you could think of collections kind of like folders on your computer. Let's say you name a folder something like videos. You would only put videos in that folder. Or maybe you have a folder called Flutter projects. You would only put your Flutter projects in there. Collections and documents in the database are the same thing. So you have a collection, in this case users, and you would only put user documents in there. Document is just kind of like a collection of data. And I guess that's where they got the word collection from. So within each user collection, you have a collection of documents or collection of data. Now, of course, we don't want to be adding users like we did here. We want to do that through our application. In order to do that, we need to add another Flutter package to our project. This one is called Cloud Firestore. The place where we want to add the actual user data is whenever the user is actually created within our application. So whenever the user signs up, we want them both to get authentication and their own database-like entry added. So in order to do that, we're going to need to access Firestore like we did with the authentication. So here we have our instance for Firestore defined. And we can go, after we have authenticated the user, we can go ahead and add them to a database. So the collection we want to add them to is called users. And we want to add their data in there. Now what we could do here is define something like name and then email controller.text. And that doesn't make sense, but let's say we change this field to email and we pass their email controller.text. And there's not really a problem with this, but in order to ensure that you're always passing the right information, we want to set up a data class. Models of what kind of data you want to have. So in this case, we're going to add a file called user.dart. Within this user.dart, we're going to create a Firebase user model. Now for now, this model will just have their email, but later on we'll add some more stuff. I want to be able to actually create this model, so Firebase user or this dot email. Okay, so we created a class with the user's email, and this is basically our interface for what a user should look like that goes to Firebase. Now we're going to add an extension to Firebase that makes this next part a little bit easier. Because if you remember the way we were adding data, the syntax has this email and an email controller. This is a map. What I'm going to do is have a function within here that turns our Firebase user into a map and gets our data from a map into this Firebase user object. Now we can do that manually, but I'm going to add an extension called Dart Data Class Generator. And using this Dart Data Class Generator, you can hover over Firebase user, click Command or Control period, and create a data class with it. And this data class gives us all these functions down here. Now we're not going to use most of these. Actually, we're only going to use these three. This one converts our data to a map. So when we want to send that data to Firestore, we're going to use the to map data. But when we're retrieving it from Firebase, we're going to use the from map to turn it into this Firebase user. Now what this does is here that we can remove this and we can send them a Firebase user with the email controller.text, and we can convert that to a map. Well, the reason this is nice is because we always have to send a Firebase user. Let's say maybe in the next lesson, I don't know, we add another field here called name or profile picture. When we go back here, we're not going to be able to send anything unless it has a name and a profile picture. It ensures safety throughout your application. And whenever we're reading the data, it's a little easier to manage. So let's see if that worked. And to do that, let me actually first delete this collection so we can ensure that it actually worked. And authentication, I'll actually just create a different user so we know that there's two of them. So this one, I'll do t@tatus.com. And we actually want to sign up, not log in. So t@tatus.com. My very secure password that I've been using for everything. Sign up. This email is already in use by another account. I know what happened here. When we click sign up, we actually want to do navigator.pop. Because now look, if we try to go back to the previous screen, it'll just go back to home where we're signed in. So we got navigator.pop here. And we want to await. And we also want to do this if not mounted, return. That makes our errors go away. This basically says to make sure that there's like a scaffold, there's something to pop because we have all these asynchronous things coming on. It's just like a safety check. So it worked. We can go back to this. If we reload, we should see a new t@tatus.com. Perfect. And if we go to Firestore, we'll see a users collection with the user and my email here. So there we go. So now we have our user data stored within Firestore, and we're able to expand on this and add more user data here. And that's what we're going to do in the next lesson. And not only that, we're going to create a state object so that our user has its state or its information available to it throughout their application.